May 11th, 1943. 0247 hours. North Atlantic, 420 miles southwest of Iceland. The ocean is black, not the darkness of a moonless night on land, where eyes adjust and shapes emerge from shadow, but the absolute, impenetrable blackness of the mid-Atlantic in the dead hours before dawn. The wind carries spray across the water at 15 knots, and the swells rise and fall in rhythms older than human memory. Kapitänleutnant Ernst Bauer stands in the conning tower of U-456, his oilskin slick with seawater, his beard thick with salt. He has been a U-boat commander for 18 months. He has sunk 11 Allied ships. He knows these waters the way a farmer knows his fields, intimately, instinctively. Tonight, like every night for the past 2 years of this war, he has brought his boat to the surface to recharge batteries and refresh the air below. The diesels rumble beneath his feet, their vibration a comfort, their noise a kind of music. Around him, 3 other men occupy the bridge, his watch officer, Oberleutnant Klaus Reinhardt, and 2 lookouts whose eyes never stop moving across the horizon. They scan in quadrants, methodically, the way they've been trained. North, northeast, east, southeast. The ritual of survival. Clear to starboard. One lookout reports. Clear aft, says the other. Bauer checks his watch. They've been surfaced for 43 minutes. The batteries are at 68%. Another hour and they'll be full. Another hour and they can dive again, disappear into the safety of the depths, become invisible once more. The war has changed in recent months. Bauer has felt it the way an animal feels a coming storm. More aircraft. More escorts. Convoys that used to be easy prey now bristling with destroyers and corvettes. But the night remains their ally. In darkness, the U-boat is still supreme. No Allied ship can see them. No aircraft can spot them. They are ghosts on the surface, charging their batteries, plotting their next kill. Herr Kalon, Reinhardt says, using the abbreviation for Kapitänleutnant. Permission to light a cigarette. Bauer nods. The small pleasures matter. Below deck, 50 men live in a steel tube 220 feet long and 20 feet wide. They breathe recycled air that reeks of diesel fuel, unwashed bodies, and mildew. They sleep in shifts, hot bunking, their skin perpetually damp. They eat canned meat and moldy bread. They go weeks without seeing the sun. The men who come to the bridge savor every moment of fresh air, even air this cold and wet. Reinhardt cups his hands around a match. The flame blooms orange in the darkness, briefly illuminating his hollow cheeks and sunken eyes. Every man on this boat looks the same now. Gaunt, pale, aged beyond his years. War has carved them down to essential elements. The cigarette glows red. Reinhardt exhales, and the smoke vanishes into the wind. How much longer? Herr Kalon, one of the lookouts asks. Another hour, Bauer says. Then we hunt. The words are confident, automatic, but something nags at him. An unease he cannot name. 3 boats from his wolf pack have failed to report in the past week. Simply silent. Gone. The radio operators in France transmit position requests, and the ether gives back nothing. 11 boats lost in the past month across the North Atlantic. The numbers are starting to add up in ways that don't make sense. BDU, Befehlshaber der U-Boot, the U-boat command under Admiral Dönitz, insists the losses are acceptable. The tonnage war continues. For every U-boat lost, dozens of Allied ships go to the bottom. The mathematics of attrition favor Germany. This is what the orders say. But Bauer has been at sea long enough to trust his instincts more than orders. And his instincts tell him something has changed. Herr Kalon. The starboard lookout's voice cuts through the wind, sharp with tension. Sound. Bauer's head snaps right. He hears it instantly. The change in the ocean's voice. Beneath the wind and waves, a new sound. Mechanical. Rhythmic. The thrashing of propellers. Range. Bauer demands. Close. Very close. Bauer's heart accelerates. No ship should be this close without being seen. The lookouts are trained, vigilant. They should have spotted masts, a silhouette, something. But there's nothing. Just blackness. And that sound, growing louder. Clear the bridge. Bauer shouts. Dive. 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 The alarm klaxon shrieks through the boat. The lookouts throw themselves through the hatch. Reinhardt follows. Bauer takes one last look across the water. Still nothing visible, and then drops through the opening. His boots hit the control room deck as the hatch dog spin closed above him. "Flood," the chief engineer shouts. Valves open with a roar. Seawater rushes into the ballast tanks. The angle of the deck tilts forward. Both motors full ahead. "Take her down." 30 meters. The boat descends, the pressure hull creaking. The men move with practiced efficiency, but Bauer sees fear in their eyes. They all heard how close those propellers were. Too close. In the hydrophone room, bootsman Eric Fogel presses his headphones tight against his ears, his face pale in the red emergency lighting. "Contact bearing 090. Herr Calhoun. Twin screws. High speed. Destroyer." "How did it find us?" Reinhardt whispers. It's the question they're all thinking. In absolute darkness, on a moonless night, with no moon and no stars visible through the cloud cover, how did a destroyer come within 1,000 meters of a surfaced U-boat without being seen first? "Silent running," Bauer orders. The diesels cut off. The electric motors hum to minimal power. Every non-essential system shuts down. The men freeze in place, barely breathing. Above them, the destroyer's propellers pass overhead. The sound is enormous, filling the boat, shaking the hull. Every man imagines the same thing. Depth charges rolling off the stain, tumbling down through the black water toward them. But the charges don't come. The destroyer passes. The sound fades. Minutes stretch into an hour. Then 2. "Secure from silent running," Bauer finally says. "Bring us to periscope depth." The boat rises slowly. At 15 meters, Bauer raises the attack periscope and rotates through 360 degrees. The night is still pitch black. He sees nothing. No ships. No lights. No indication that anything is out there at all. What the hell just happened? Reinhardt asks quietly. Bauer lowers the periscope. His hands are shaking, and he clasps them together to hide it. "I don't know," he says. "But we're not surfacing again tonight." Below deck, in the cramped boat torpedo room, Metrosengefreiter Hans Zimmermann sits on his bunk, a canvas sheet stretched over a torpedo, and tries to stop his hands from trembling. He's 19 years old. This is his second patrol. The first one, 3 months ago, had been almost pleasant. They'd surfaced every night without incident. They'd sunk 2 ships and returned to Lorient as heroes. This patrol feels different. The fear is constant now, a pressure in his chest that never releases. Every man on the boat feels it. They don't talk about it. Talking about fear is bad luck, but it shows in their faces, in the way they move, in the silence that falls over them during meals. Zimmermann pulls out a photograph, its edges soft from handling. His mother and father stand in front of their bakery in Hamburg, smiling. The photograph is 2 years old. He wonders if the bakery still stands, if his parents are still alive, if the IAF bombers have reduced his entire childhood to rubble. "Put that away," someone mutters from the darkness. "You'll curse us." Zimmermann tucks the photograph back into his breast pocket, next to his heart. He lies back on the torpedo and closes his eyes, but he knows he won't sleep. None of them will. Not after that. Not after learning that darkness is no longer their ally. 3 days earlier, May 8, 1943, USS Bore, DD-215, North Atlantic Escort Group. Lieutenant Commander Charles Hutchins stands on the bridge of the destroyer USS Bore, watching the convoy through binoculars. 43 merchant ships stretched across 5 miles of ocean, plodding northeast at 8 knots toward Liverpool. Each ship carries cargo that could decide the war. Tanks, aircraft, ammunition, fuel, food. Each ship represents a target for the wolf packs that Admiral Dönitz has deployed across the North Atlantic like a vast net. Bore is old. Commissioned in 1920, she's a flush-deck destroyer from the last war, handed over to the Navy from mothballs when this war began to consume ships faster than shipyards could build them. She's slow, barely 32 knots on a good day, and her hull flexes in heavy seas in ways that make veteran sailors nervous. But she has teeth, 4 4-inch guns, 12 torpedo tubes, and depth charge racks on her stern. And now, she has something else. Something new. "Captain," Lieutenant Robert Hayes calls from the Combat Information Center. "CIC reports radar contact, bearing 270, range 8,000 yards. Hutchins lowers his binoculars and ducks through the hatch into the CIC. The compartment is cramped, lit by red lamps that preserve night vision. In the center of the space, a circular screen glows green. On that screen, bright white blips mark the positions of ships. But there's one blip that doesn't belong to the convoy. It's small, isolated, moving independently northwest of the formation. Safe as contact, Hayes says, tapping the screen. Small. Could be a U-boat. Hutchins studies the display. The SG radar, Surface Search, Model G, had been installed on Bory just 6 weeks ago during a refit in Boston. The radar operates at 10 centimeters, a wavelength so short it can detect objects the size of a surfaced submarine's conning tower at ranges up to 12 miles. The Germans don't know about it yet. Their radar detectors, designed to pick up the longer wavelengths used by earlier Allied radar systems, are blind to this new frequency. Range closing, the radar operator reports. 7,000 yards now. Sound general quarters, Hutchins orders. The alarm rings through the ship. Men pour from hatches, racing to battle stations. Gun crews strip the covers from their weapons. Below deck, the engineering space has transitioned to full power. Bory heels into a tane, her bow coming around toward the contact. All ahead full, Hutchins says. Close to 3,000 yards, then illuminate with searchlight. 3,000 yards, aye, sir. The destroyer accelerates. Her ancient hull vibrates with the strain. Behind Hutchins, the radar operator calls out ranges in a steady rhythm. 6,000 yards. 5,500. 5,000. Do you think they see us, Captain? Hayes asks. In this darkness. Hutchins shakes his head. They have no idea we're here. It's the middle of the night. No moon. Cloud cover at 2,000 feet. The kind of night when a surfaced U-boat should be completely safe. For 2 years, the Germans have owned these conditions. They've surfaced with impunity, recharged their batteries, crossed vast distances on diesel power, disappeared before dawn. Their radar detectors have given them warning whenever Allied ships approach with radar active, allowing them to dive before being seen. But the SG radar operates in a spectrum the Germans cannot detect. To the U-boat out there, Bory is invisible. A ghost ship, closing through the darkness. 3,000 yards, Captain. All stop. Searchlight, illuminate target. The searchlight operator throws his switch. A brilliant beam of white light stabs across the water, so bright it seems to tear a hole in the night itself. The beam sweeps left, right, hunting. Then it stops, caught in the light. 3 miles away, a U-boat wallows on the surface. Hutchins can see men on the conning tower, frozen in the sudden glare like deer on a highway. For an instant, no one moves. Then the figures on the U-boat scatter, throwing themselves through the hatch. Target acquired, the forward gun director shouts. Range 3,000. Commence firing. Bory's forward 4-inch gun roars. The shell screams across the water and explodes 50 yards beyond the U-boat, throwing up a geyser of white spray. The gun crew adjusts, fires again. This round falls short. The third round. The U-boat's conning tower vanishes beneath the waves. One moment it's there, stark in the searchlight. The next moment, only disturbed water remains. Lost visual contact, the searchlight operator reports. Hutchins ducks back into the CIC. The radar screen shows nothing where the U-boat had been. Submerged, the boat is invisible to radar, but it can't have gotten far. Sonar, do you have contact? Negative contact, sir. Water conditions are poor. Multiple thermal layers. Hutchins curses under his breath. The North Atlantic is a sonar operator's nightmare. Cold currents, warm currents, thermal boundaries that bend sound waves and create dead zones where submarines can hide. A U-boat that dives deep enough and stays quiet enough can become a ghost. Mark the position. Hutchins orders. Prepare depth charge pattern. Bory charges forward. At the point where the U-boat disappeared, the depth charge crew releases their weapons, 600-pound steel drums packed with Torpex explosive, set to detonate at 150 feet. The drums tumble off the stain, vanishing into the black water. Seconds pass. Then the ocean erupts. 4 explosions lift the sea into mountains of white foam. The shock waves hammer through Bory's hull, making the steel plates ring like bells. Hutchins grips the chart table and waits, watching the water. Any debris? He calls to the bridge. Negative, sir. No oil, no wreckage. Make another pass. Drop a full pattern. For 20 minutes, Bauer circles the area, dropping depth charges. Each explosion sends tons of water skyward. Each shock wave radiates outward through the depths. But when the water settles, there's no evidence of a kill. No oil slick. No debris. No bodies. Sonar contact. The sonar operator suddenly shouts. Bearing 045, range 1,000 yards, moving fast. He's running, Hayes says. Hutchins nods grimly. The U-boat escaped the first attack and now races away at maximum submerged speed, probably 7 or 8 knots. Bauer can make 32 knots on the surface. It's a simple equation. The destroyer will run the submarine down. All ahead flank. Close and attack. The chase lasts 3 hours. The U-boat captain is skilled. He varies his depth, changes course, tries every trick in the book to shake the destroyer. But Bauer's sonar maintains contact, and each time the submarine slows to listen, the destroyer closes the range. At 0615 hours, with dawn beginning to gray the eastern horizon, Hutchins orders one final attack run. Full pattern. Everything we've got left. 8 depth charges roll off the stern. The explosions merge into a single sustained roar. The water churns white. And then, slowly, debris begins to surface. Pieces of wood. Shattered cork insulation. A life jacket. An oil slick spreading across the water like a wound. Wreckage confirmed, the lookout reports. Hutchins feels no triumph. Just exhaustion and a grim satisfaction. One less U-boat. One less threat to the convoy. He thinks about the men who were on that submarine. 50, maybe 60 young men, drowning or crushed by pressure in the darkness below. He doesn't allow himself to dwell on it. That way lies paralysis. Secure from general quarters, he orders. Resume escort position. As Bauer turns back toward the convoy, Hayes approaches Hutchins on the bridge. That's the third one this week, sir. 3 U-boats detected by SG radar. 3 kills. Send the report to Concourse Inlet. Hutchins says. Market priority. This technology is working. We need it on every escort ship in the Atlantic. Hayes nods and heads below. Hutchins remains on the bridge, watching the sun rise over an ocean that has swallowed another submarine. He thinks about the German commanders out there, the men who have hunted convoys for years with near impunity. He wonders if they understand yet that the rules have changed, that the darkness is no longer their sanctuary, that the Allies can see in the dark now. May 12, 1943. Carnival, France. U-boat command headquarters. The chateau sits on a hillside overlooking the harbor at Lorient. Its stone walls thick enough to withstand bombardment, its cellars converted into command bunkers reinforced with concrete and steel. Here, in this requisitioned French mansion, Gross Admiral Dönitz directs the U-boat war, the tonnage war, as he calls it. The mathematics of attrition. Sink more Allied shipping than they can replace, and eventually, Britain will starve, her armies will lack fuel and ammunition, and the invasion of Europe will become impossible. In the operations room, the wall is covered with a massive map of the Atlantic. Pins mark U-boat positions. Red strings track convoy routes. Each day, intelligence reports arrive from across the ocean. Ships sunk, U-boats deployed, wolfpack formations. Each day, Dönitz studies the map and calculates whether Germany is winning the arithmetic. Today, the arithmetic is troubling. 43 boats. Conter-Admiral Eberhard Gott says quietly. His Dönitz chief of staff, a methodical man with steel-rimmed glasses who manages the daily operations of BDU. 43 boats lost in May alone. And we're only 12 days into the month. Dönitz stands before the map, his hands clasped behind his back. He's 51 years old, a veteran of the last war, a submariner who understands the psychology of underwater warfare as well as its tactics. He built this U-boat force from nothing. In 1939, Germany had 57 operational U-boats. Now, in 1943, there are over 400. They should be winning. They should be strangling Britain. Instead, boats are disappearing at an unprecedented rate. What are the common factors? Dönitz asks. Gott consults his clipboard. Night attacks. In all cases, the boats were detected while surfaced at night, during battery charging operations. The destroyers appeared without warning. No radar emissions detected. No prior contact. Simply, there, at close range. Weather conditions. Variable. Some attacks occurred in clear weather, some in overcast. Moon phase doesn't seem to correlate. The attacks are happening in all conditions, Captain. Dönitz circles the map, studying the positions where U-boats were lost. They are scattered across the North Atlantic, from the Denmark Strait to the waters south of Greenland. No pattern, no common geographic feature that might explain how Allied ships are finding submarines in total darkness. The boats are following procedure. Dönitz asks, "Lookouts posted, radar detectors active?" "Yes, sir. In several cases, we received radio reports just minutes before the attacks. The commanders reported their radar detectors showed no emissions. The ocean was clear. Then, suddenly, they were under attack." Dönitz knows what this means. The Allies have developed a new radar system, one that operates on a wavelength the German detectors cannot sense. He's heard rumors from intelligence sections, fragments of information from captured documents and interrogated prisoners. The British have been working on centimetric radar that operates at wavelengths of 10 centimeters or less, rather than the 150 centimeter wavelengths of earlier systems. If the Allies have deployed this technology, it changes everything. A U-boat's greatest advantage is invisibility. Submerged, it's nearly impossible to detect. But submerged, it's also slow, limited to battery power, maximum speed 7 or 8 knots, range measured in tens of miles. To cross the Atlantic, to position for attacks, to maintain operational effectiveness, U-boats must surface. They must run on diesel power. They must recharge batteries. For 2 years, surfacing at night has been safe. Allied aircraft can't see in darkness. Allied ships can't detect a low-profile submarine hull. The U-boats have owned the night. Now, if the enemy can see in darkness, the U-boat force is in crisis. We need to confirm this, Dönitz says. Interrogate every captured Allied sailor. Review every after-action report. Find out what technology they are using. Sir, God says carefully, if the Allies have deployed centimetric radar, we have no countermeasure. Our detectors are useless against it. Our boats will be blind. Then we develop new tactics. Dönitz's voice is firm. He's spent 4 years building this force, training these men, perfecting these strategies. He won't abandon them because of one technological setback. The boats will dive during the day and night. They'll remain submerged except for minimal surface time. We'll use snorkel technology. The snorkel is experimental, sir. Only a handful of boats have been fitted. Then we fit more boats. Dönitz turns from the map, his jaw set. We adapt. We survive. That's what we do. But even as he says it, he knows the truth. The war at sea is balanced on a knife's edge. U-boats sink Allied ships. Allied shipyards build replacements. The question is simple. Which side can sustain its losses longer? If U-boats can no longer operate safely at night, if they must remain submerged almost constantly, their effectiveness drops by half, maybe more. They become defensive weapons rather than offensive hunters. And defensive weapons don't win wars. God hesitates, then speaks. Sir, there's another matter. The men. Morale is fragile. When boats return from patrol, the crews report that the ocean feels different now. They use words like hunted. They're afraid. They're submariners, Dönitz snaps. Fear is part of the job. Yes, sir. But fear without hope destroys men. Right now, our crews believe they are being detected by technology they can't understand, attacked by forces they can't see. It's like fighting ghosts. Dönitz is silent for a long moment. He thinks about the young men he sends to sea. Boys, really, most of them barely 20 years old. They volunteer for U-boat service knowing the odds. 1 in 3 will die. 1 in 3 will be captured. 1 in 3 might survive the war. They accept this because they believe in the mission, in the brotherhood of the boat, in the superiority of German engineering and training. But if they stop believing they can win, if they start to feel like sacrificial victims, the force will collapse from within. Increase leave time between patrols. Dönitz orders. Improve accommodations in the bunkers. Make sure the men have access to good food, alcohol, entertainment, and keep them informed. Tell them we're working on countermeasures. Tell them we're adapting. Yes, sir. And gut. Dönitz's voice softened slightly. Send a message to all boats at sea. Tell them to exercise extreme caution when surfacing. Minimum time on the surface. Maximum vigilance. We will not lose this war because we underestimated our enemy. After Gott leaves, Dönitz remains alone in the operations room. He approaches the map again, studying the pins that mark his U-boats. Each pin represents a commander he has trained, a crew he has sent into danger. Each pin represents 50 men living in a steel tube beneath the ocean, hunting and being hunted. 43 pins have been removed from the map this month. 43 boats, 2,000 men, give or take, drowned, crushed, vaporized by depth charges. Gone. Dönitz picks up one of the pins, a small metal marker painted white to indicate a Type VIC boat. He rolls it between his fingers, feeling its weight. So light, so insignificant. Yet each pin represents incalculable value, years of training, millions of Reichsmarks in construction costs, the irreplaceable experience of combat veterans. He places the pin back on the map, positioning it carefully. Then he turns and walks from the room, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Outside, through the chateau's thick windows, he can see the harbor. U-boats line the quays, gray shapes against gray water. Crews swarm over them, loading torpedoes, taking on fuel and provisions. Soon they'll depart, heading out into the Atlantic, into the darkness, into whatever new hell the Allies have prepared. Dönitz watches them go, and for the first time in this war, he allows himself to wonder if the mathematics might not work out after all. May 15th, 1943. U-456, North Atlantic. For 4 days, U-456 has been running. Not hunting, running. Kapitänleutnant Bauer keeps the boat submerged except for brief, desperate ascents to snorkel depth. Even these are dangerous. Twice, aircraft have appeared from nowhere, forcing emergency dives. Once, a destroyer passed within 2 miles, its propellers audible through the hull like the footsteps of a giant. The crew is exhausted. The air inside the boat has gone foul, thick with carbon dioxide, heavy with the stench of unwashed men and overflowing waste buckets. The batteries are perpetually low. They can't surface long enough to fully recharge them. They can't run the diesels for more than 30 minutes before some threat appears and forces them under again. In the control room, Bauer studies the chart. They are 380 miles west of Ireland. Home is 600 miles to the southeast. At their current pace, submerged, conserving battery power, it will take them 5 days to reach Lorient. Maybe 6. And they have fuel for 4. Herr Calhoun, the radio operator calls from his cubicle. Message from BDU. Bauer crosses to the radio room and takes the decoded message. He reads it twice, his lips pressed into a thin line. All boats return to port. Repeat, all boats return to port. North Atlantic operations temporarily suspended. Acknowledge receipt. Temporarily suspended. Oberleutnant Reinhard reads over Bauer's shoulder. What does that mean? It means we're losing, Bauer says flatly. He hands the message back to the radio operator. Acknowledge. Then calculate the fastest route home. Safest route, assuming we own the night. Say. The radio operator's voice is uncertain. We've been ordered to remain submerged except in emergency. I know the orders, but we don't have the fuel to creep home underwater. We'll surface after dark. Run on diesels at maximum speed. Get home before our luck runs out. The news spreads through the boat within minutes. The North Atlantic campaign, the campaign that was supposed to starve Britain, that was supposed to win the war, has been suspended. The men react with a mixture of relief and unease. Relief that they are going home. Unease about what it means that BDU is recalling the entire fleet. It's the radar, Zimmerman whispers to the man in the bunk next to him. They can see us in the dark now. We're not invisible anymore. Shut up, the other man hisses. Don't talk about it. But everyone is thinking about it. Every man on the boat has heard the rumors, the stories from other crews. U-boats attacked on moonless nights. Destroyers appearing from nowhere. Boats disappearing without trace. The ocean that had once been their hunting ground has become their graveyard. At 2,200 hours, with full darkness settled over the Atlantic, Bauer gives the order to surface. The boat rises slowly, cautiously. The conning tower breaks the surface. Water streams from the deck. The diesels cough, sputter, catch. Their roar is the sweetest sound the crew has heard in days. Bauer climbs to the bridge. The night is overcast, visibility near zero. Perfect conditions, or so he would have thought, 4 days ago. Now, he's not sure perfect conditions exist anymore. All ahead full, he orders. Course 135. Straight for home. U-456 accelerates, her bow lifting as she comes onto plane. The diesels howl. The propellers churn. 12 knots. 13. 14. This is what the boat was designed for, running on the surface, eating up miles, charging batteries while she travels. For 2 hours, it works. They cover 28 nautical miles. The batteries climb to 40%, then 50. The crew begins to relax. Perhaps the danger has passed. Perhaps they are beyond the range where the Allied escorts operate. Perhaps. Aircraft, the aft lookout screams. Diving. Diving. Bauer doesn't hesitate. Clear the bridge. Dive. Dive. The alarm shrieks. The men tumble through the hatch. The diesels cut off with a bang. Valves open. Water floods in. Close all vents. Take her down. 40 meters. The boat tilts forward. Through the hull comes a new sound, high-pitched, growing louder. A whistling. Falling. Depth charge. The explosion lifts the entire boat sideways. Men are thrown from their stations. The lights go out. Emergency lamps click on, bathing everything in red. Another explosion. Closer. The hull groans. Cork insulation rains from the overhead. Somewhere aft, someone is screaming. Damage report. Bauer shouts. Hull integrity maintained. Minor flooding in the engine room. Hydraulic line ruptured on the port dive plane. Can we stay? Yes, Herr Calhoun. But we're losing hydraulic pressure. The port dive plane is sluggish. Another explosion, farther away this time. The aircraft is dropping a pattern, saturating the area. U-456 twists and turns, trying to evade, but a submerged U-boat is agonizingly slow. 7 knots maximum. A sitting target. The attack continues for 20 minutes. Depth charges bracket the boat, each explosion hammering through the hull, each shock wave testing the welds and rivets that hold the pressure vessel together. Paint chips from the bulkheads. The deck plates jump. Men pray in whispers. Then silence. The aircraft must have expended its weapons. It circles overhead for another 10 minutes, the sound of its engines fading and growing as it searches. Then it departs, and the ocean returns to its ancient quiet. Surface. Reinhardt asks. Bauer shakes his head. Not yet. We'll wait 2 hours. Make sure it's clay. In the forward torpedo room, Zimmerman sits with his head in his hands, trying to control his breathing. His heart is racing so fast it feels like it might tear itself apart. Around him, other men sit in various postures of shock and exhaustion. No one speaks. There's nothing to say. They all understand now. The ocean is no longer their domain. The darkness is no longer their ally. Somewhere out there, the enemy has eyes that can see through night, through fog, through clouds. The U-boat, which had been the most feared weapon in the German arsenal, has become a liability. At midnight, Bauer orders the boat back to the surface. This time, they run for only 1 hour before diving again. Then up for another hour. Down. Up. Down. A desperate leapfrog toward safety, gambling that they can make it home before the enemy finds them again. It takes 6 days. 6 days of terror and exhaustion. 6 days of running and hiding. When they finally enter the approaches to Lorient, when they finally see the coast of France emerge from the morning mist, the entire crew comes to the control room to look through the periscope, to confirm that they've made it. They're home. They're alive. And they know, with absolute certainty, that they will never go back to the North Atlantic. Not while the enemy can see in the dark. May 20th, 1943. MIT Radiation Laboratory, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Dr. Robert Everett stands before the prototype radar unit, watching the oscilloscope trace green lines across its black screen. The unit is compact, small enough to fit inside a ship's combat information center, powerful enough to detect a surfaced submarine at 10 miles. It operates at 10 centimeters, a wavelength that represents a revolution in radar technology. The room is crowded with engineers and scientists, men in shirt sleeves and ties, women in practical dresses, all of them focused on the glowing screens and humming equipment that lined the walls. This laboratory, established in 1940, has become the beating heart of Allied radar development. Here, in repurposed academic buildings, physicists and engineers race against time to create tools that can win the war. "How many units are in production?" asks Commander James Walsh, a Navy liaison officer who's been sent to evaluate the radar program. 20 per week, Everett replies. "We're prioritizing fleet escorts, destroyers and destroyer escorts. Every ship leaving Norfolk is getting an SG unit installed. Within 3 months, every escort in the Atlantic will have centimetric radar." Walsh nods slowly, impressed despite himself. His career naval officer, trained in surface warfare, accustomed to thinking of naval combat in terms of guns and torpedoes and visual sighting. This new technology, fighting by electronic impulses, detecting enemies with invisible beams, feels alien to him. But he can't argue with the results. The U-boat kills are confirmed. Walsh asks, 27 in May alone, directly attributable to SG radar detection. Everett taps a folder on the workbench. "The Germans are blind to our transmissions. Their radar detectors, the METOC system, can only sense wavelengths above 100 centimeters. We're operating at 10 centimeters. To them, we're invisible until we're right on top of them." Can they adapt? Develop new detectors? Eventually, yes, but it will take time. They'll need to completely redesign their receivers, recalibrate their systems. By the time they do, we'll be working on the next generation of radar. We're always going to stay ahead of them. Everett walks to a blackboard covered with equations and circuit diagrams. He's 32 years old, a physicist who left his university position to work on radar development. Before the war, he studied cosmic rays and atomic structure, esoteric research with no practical application. Now, his work kills men. He tries not to think about that too much. The key was the cavity magnetron, Everett explains, pointing to a diagram on the board. The British invented it in 1940, a vacuum tube that generates high-power microwaves. Before that, we couldn't generate enough power at centimetric wavelengths to get useful radar range. The magnetron solved that problem. It's the heart of the system. Walsh studies the diagram without really understanding it. The technical details don't matter to him. What matters is that American destroyers can now find U-boats in total darkness, can hunt them down and kill them before they can threaten convoys. What about air search radar? Walsh asks, can we put this technology on aircraft? We already have. ASV Mark III radar is being installed on patrol aircraft. It operates at 9.7 centimeters. An aircraft flying at 1,000 feet can detect a surfaced U-boat at 12 miles. In daytime or darkness, clear weather or fog, it doesn't matter. If the U-boat is on the surface, we can find it. Walsh allows himself a thin smile. For 2 years, the U-boat war has been a nightmare. Convoys savaged, hundreds of ships sent to the bottom, thousands of sailors drowned. The Battle of the Atlantic, Churchill called it, the battle upon which all others depended. If Britain couldn't be supplied, if the convoys couldn't get through, the war was lost. Now, finally, the tide is turning. Not because of better tactics or more ships or braver men, but because of technology. Because of engineers in a laboratory in Massachusetts, working with oscilloscopes and magnetrons and differential equations. How long have you been working on this? Walsh asks. 3 years, Everett says. Since 1940. The British shared the cavity magnetron with us that year. But 'tis admission. They called it. They gave us their most secret technology, and we've been improving it ever since. Faster, smaller, more powerful. This is what partnership looks like. Commander. British innovation, American manufacturing. Walsh thinks about the U-boats, about the young German submariners who have no idea they are being hunted by invisible beams of electromagnetic radiation. He feels a brief flicker of sympathy. They're sailors like him, after all, fighting for their country. But he suppresses it. This is war. The U-boats have shown no mercy to Allied merchant sailors, have sent thousands to drowning deaths in the cold Atlantic. Turnabout is fair play. Send a report to Komkorsinland. Walsh says. Tell them the program is successful beyond expectations. Tell them to install these units on every available vessel. And tell them. He pauses, choosing his words carefully. Tell them that we're winning the Battle of the Atlantic. After Walsh leaves, Everett remains in the laboratory, watching the radar screens trace their endless patterns. Around him, engineers continue their work, adjusting circuits, testing components, preparing the next batch of units for shipment to the shipyards. Everett thinks about the war, about the strange path that brought him here. 5 years ago, he was teaching quantum mechanics to undergraduates, publishing papers that maybe 100 people in the world would read. Now, his work affects the course of history. The radar units he's designed are killing enemy submariners by the hundreds, saving Allied ships by the thousands. Is it a good thing? He's not sure. The mathematics are clean, elegant, beautiful. The real-world consequences are horrifying. Every green blip on those radar screens represents human beings, men who have families, who have lives, who want to go home. The radar doesn't care. It just shows where they are, so destroyers can find them and kill them. Everett turns away from the screens and goes back to his workbench. There's always more to do. The radar can be improved. The range can be extended. The resolution can be sharpened. The work never stops. Outside, the sun is setting over Cambridge. Students walk across the campus, heading to dinner or study groups or evening lectures. For them, the war is distant, something that happens on newsreels, something their brothers and fathers are fighting overseas. They don't know that here, in this laboratory, engineers are forging the weapons that will decide whether America wins or loses. Everett picks up a circuit diagram and begins to make notes in the margin, calculations for a new antenna design that might improve performance by 5%. 5% doesn't sound like much, but 5% might mean detecting a U-boat at 11 miles instead of 10. And that extra mile might mean the difference between sinking the submarine and letting it escape to sink another convoy. Every detail matters. Every improvement matters. This is how wars are won, not in dramatic battles or heroic charges, but in laboratories and factories, in the patient accumulation of small advantages that eventually become decisive. Everett works late into the night, alone in the laboratory, under the pale glow of fluorescent lights. Somewhere in the Atlantic, radar units based on his designs are hunting submarines. Men are dying because of his equations. He tells himself it's necessary. He tells himself it's saving lives in the long run. Killing U-boats means saving merchant ships, which means keeping Britain supplied, which means winning the war. The arithmetic is clay. But sometimes, late at night, when the laboratory is quiet and is alone with his thoughts, he wonders what the German engineers are like. Are they like him? Working in their own laboratories, trying to develop countermeasures, trying to save their submariners? Are they also troubled by the human cost of their technical work? He'll never know. They're the enemy. Faceless, anonymous. Just blips on a radar screen. Everett returns to his calculations, pushing the questions aside. There's work to do. May 24th, 1943. U-boat Pen, Lorient, France. The concrete bunker rises 7 stories above the harbor, its walls 12 feet thick, its roof reinforced to withstand 1,000-pound bombs. Inside, U-boats nestle in water-filled berths, protected from Allied air raids by millions of tons of concrete and steel. The pens can hold 30 boats at once, servicing them, rearming them, preparing them for their next patrol. Today, the pens are crowded. 42 U-boats have returned in the past week, recalled from the Atlantic by Dönitz emergency order. They lie side by side in their berths, gray shapes in gray water, while crews and maintenance teams swarm over them like ants. Kapitänleutnant Bauer stands on the dock, watching his boat being tended. U-456 looks battered, rust streaks on her hull, dents in her conning tower from near-miss depth charges, her paint scored and peeling. She looks the way he feels, used up, worn out, at the end of her rope. Herr Kalun. Bauer turns. Corvette Captain Heinrich Schroeder approaches, a clipboard in his hand. Schroeder is a staff officer, one of the men who managed the logistics of the U-boat war from the safety of shore. He's 35 but looks 50, his face lined with stress, I need your patrol report, Schroeder says. You'll have it tomorrow. I need it today. BDU wants reports from all returning boats immediately. They are conducting an analysis. Bauer lights a cigarette, his hands steady despite the exhaustion that permeates his bones. I can tell you what the analysis will show. We're being slaughtered. The enemy has a new radar system we can't detect. They can find us on the surface in total darkness. Our boats are being sunk faster than the shipyards can build them. The North Atlantic is a death trap. Schroeder's expression doesn't change. He's heard this speech from a dozen other commanders in the past week. Nevertheless, the report. You want the report? Fine. We departed Lorient on May 3rd with full fuel and full torpedo complement. We sank 0 ships. We were detected and attacked 6 times. 3 times by aircraft, 3 times by surface vessels. Each attack occurred while we were surfaced, during hours of darkness, with no advance warning. Our radar detector never registered a single emission. On May 12th, we received orders to return to base. We spent 6 days running for our lives. We arrived with 20% fuel remaining and 4 working torpedoes. The crew is exhausted, the boat is damaged, and if you send us back out there, we won't come back. How's that for a report? Schroeder writes on his clipboard, his face impassive. Have you submitted a request for extended leave? I'm submitting a request for reassignment. I want a surface command, or a posting to a training facility. Anything but another Atlantic patrol. Now Schroeder looks up, his eyes sharp. You're one of our most experienced commanders, Herr Calhoun. We need men like you. You need men who are still alive, Bauer interrupts. Right now, the life expectancy of a U-boat in the Atlantic is about 4 weeks. Maybe less. I've been lucky. Most of my colleagues haven't been. I'd like to stay lucky. There's no honor in requesting reassignment. Bauer laughs, a bitter sound. There's no honor in dying uselessly. Look around this pen. Captain, how many of these boats do you think will survive their next patrol? Half. A third. We're not fighting a war anymore. We're committing suicide. Schroeder closes his clipboard. I'll pass your request up the chain. But I can tell you now, it will be denied. We need every experienced commander we have. The withdrawal from the North Atlantic is temporary. We're developing new tactics, new technology. When we return, if we return, we'll be stronger, more prepared. The Führer has promised new wonder weapons. Type XXI boats with better batteries, higher submerged speeds. Acoustic torpedoes at home and on propeller noise. We will adapt. We will overcome. Bauer flicks his cigarette into the water and watches it spiral down into the oily darkness. He wants to believe Schroeder. He wants to believe that German ingenuity will find a solution, that the tide can still turn. But he's been in the Atlantic. He's seen what the Allies can do now. And he knows, with cold certainty, that the war at sea is lost. When do they want us ready for our next patrol? Bauer asks. 6 weeks. Time for repairs, crew rest, retraining on new equipment. 6 weeks. Bauer nods slowly. 6 weeks to prepare for another patrol into the death zone. 6 weeks to say goodbye to his crew, most of whom won't survive past September. I'll have my report on your desk by 1800 hours. Schroeder salutes and walks away. Bauer remains on the dock, staring at his boat. Below deck, his crew is unloading, carrying their few possessions up through the hatches, climbing onto the dock with the shambling gait of men who've spent too long in confined spaces. They look like refugees. Pale, thin, haunted. Zimmerman appears from the forward hatch, a canvas bag slung over his shoulder. He sees Bauer and approaches, standing at attention. Permission to go ashore, Herr Calhoun. Granted. You have 6 weeks leave. Make the most of it. Will we? Zimmerman hesitates. Will we be going back out, sir? Bauer looks at the young sailor. 19 years old. 2 patrols completed. In a just world, he'd be in university, studying engineering or medicine, falling in love, planning a future. Instead, he's a submariner in a losing war, with a life expectancy measured in weeks. I don't know, Bauer says honestly. Probably, but not to the North Atlantic. They are pulling us out of there. Relief washes over Zimmerman's face. Thank God. Dismissed. Zimmerman hurries away, joining a group of his crewmates heading toward the gate. They'll take the train to Paris, Bauer knows. They'll get drunk, find women, try to forget the ocean and the darkness and the depth charges. Some of them won't come back. They'll desert, disappear into occupied France, take their chances with false papers rather than return to the boats. Bauer won't report them. Every man has his breaking point. As the sun sets over Lorient, Bauer makes his way to the officers' quarters. He needs sleep. He needs a hot shower. He needs to write letters to the families of the 3 crewmen who didn't make it back. 1 killed when a hydraulic line ruptured during a depth charge attack. 2 swept overboard when they surfaced in heavy seas off Ireland. 3 men. A light casualty rate, by the standards of May 1943. Some boats came back with half their crew dead or missing. Some boats didn't come back at all. In his quarters, a concrete room with a cot, a desk, a single window that looks out over the harbor, Bauer opens his logbook and begins to write. He documents every detail of the patrol, positions, encounters, mechanical issues, decisions made. The logbook is supposed to be an operational record, but as he writes, it becomes something else. A testament. A record of what happened when the hunters became the hunted, when technology shifted the balance of power, when the ocean that had been Germany's greatest weapon became its graveyard. He writes until his hand cramps, until the pages are full. Then he closes the logbook, locks it in his desk drawer, and lies down on the cot. Through the window, he can see stars emerging in the darkening sky. He used to navigate by those stars. Now, they just make him think of all the men floating dead beneath the surface of the Atlantic, looking up at stars they'll never see again. Sleep comes slowly, and when it does, he dreams of explosions and darkness and the shriek of tearing metal. June 1st, 1943. Atlantic Convoy Conference, Washington, D.C. The conference room in the Navy Department building is packed with officers, Americans, British, Canadians, men who have spent the past 3 years fighting the Battle of the Atlantic. On the wall behind the podium, a large map shows the ocean divided into sectors, each sector marked with statistics: ships sunk, U-boats destroyed, convoy routes. The numbers tell a story of carnage on an industrial scale. Admiral Ernst King, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet, stands at the podium. He's 64 years old, a career naval officer known for his acerbic temperament and his strategic brilliance. He surveys the room with hard eyes, then begins to speak. Gentlemen, 3 months ago, we were losing the Battle of the Atlantic. In March 1943, U-boats sank 108 Allied ships, 627,000 tons of shipping. We were building ships as fast as we could, but the Germans were sinking them faster. Admiral Dönitz believed he could win the war by simple mathematics. Sink more ships than we can replace, and Britain starves. King pauses, letting the grim statistics sink in. Every man in this room knows what was at stake. Britain depends on convoys for food, fuel, raw materials, everything. Cut the convoys, and Britain falls. And if Britain falls, there's no base from which to launch an invasion of Europe. The war is lost. But something changed in May. King continues. U-boat losses spiked dramatically. 43 boats sunk in a single month. Dönitz has withdrawn his remaining boats from the North Atlantic. The Wolfpack operations have ceased. For the first time since 1940, we control the Atlantic convoy routes. A murmur runs through the room. These officers have lived with the U-boat threat for so long that victory seems almost impossible to believe. What changed? King asks rhetorically. Technology. Specifically, centimetric radar. The SG surface search radar and the ASV Mark III airborne radar both operate at wavelengths the Germans cannot detect. We can find U-boats on the surface, at night, in any weather conditions. We can hunt them, and we can kill them. King gestures to an aide, who distributes folders to the officers in the room. These are the after-action reports from May. I want you to read them, study them, understand what happened, because this is how we win the war, not just by fighting harder, but by fighting smarter, by using technology to offset enemy advantages. Captain Roger Wynne, the British intelligence officer who runs the U-boat tracking room, raises his hand. Admiral, do we have any indication that the Germans are developing countermeasures? Not yet, King replies. But they will. They're not stupid. Eventually, they'll figure out what we're doing and adapt. That's why we need to press our advantage now, while we have it. Increase convoy sailings. Reduce ship turnaround time in port. Get as much material to Britain as possible before the Germans develop new tactics. What about the U-boats and other theaters? Another officer asks. The South Atlantic. The Indian Ocean. We'll deal with them as resources allow. But the North Atlantic is the decisive theater. That's where the war will be won or lost. And right now, gentlemen, we're winning. The conference continues for another 2 hours, discussing logistics, tactics, coordination between allied navies. But the essential point has been made. The tide has turned. The U-boat menace, which has haunted the Atlantic for 3 years, has been broken. Not permanently. Not yet. But broken enough that the convoys can get through, that supplies can reach Britain, that the invasion of Europe can proceed as planned. After the conference ends, King remains in the room, studying the map. He thinks about the Battle of the Atlantic, the longest, most complex battle of the war. More than 3,000 ships sunk, 72,000 Allied sailors and merchant mariners killed, and on the German side, 783 U-boats destroyed, 28,000 submariners dead. The numbers are staggering, but the mathematics have finally shifted in favor of the Allies, partly because of increased escort numbers, partly because of better tactics and training, but mostly because of radar, a technology that seemed like science fiction just 5 years ago, now deployed on hundreds of ships and aircraft, hunting submarines with invisible beams. King thinks about the German submariners, about what they must be feeling right now. For 2 years, they dominated the Atlantic. They sank ships almost at will. They were heroes in Germany, celebrated in propaganda, praised by Hitler himself. Now, suddenly, they are being slaughtered. Their boats are coffins. Their missions are suicide runs. He feels no sympathy. This is war. The U-boats showed no mercy to Allied merchantmen, torpedoing unarmed cargo ships without warning, leaving survivors to drown in the freezing Atlantic. What's happening to the U-boats now is justice, of a sort. And yet, King is professional enough to respect the German submariners. They are brave men, fighting with skill and determination in conditions of unimaginable hardship. In another time, another war, they might have been allies. But in this war, they are the enemy, and the enemy must be destroyed. King picks up one of the after-action reports and reads it again. USS Bory, destroyer DD-215. 3 U-boats detected by SG radar. 2 sunk by depth charges, 1 damaged and driven off. No casualties to Bory or the convoy she was escorting. This is what victory looks like. Not glorious. Not heroic. Just efficient. A technological advantage exploited to maximum effect, turning the odds from even to overwhelming. King closes the folder and leaves the conference room. Outside, Washington is bright with summer sunshine. Civilians walk the streets, going about their business, unaware of the conference that just took place, unaware of the turning point that has been reached in the war. They'll know soon enough. When the casualty lists shorten, when fewer telegrams arrive at homes across America, informing families that their sons have been lost at sea, when the invasion of Europe finally happens, and the tide of war turns irreversibly against Germany. But for now, only the men in that conference room know the truth. The Battle of the Atlantic has been won. Not completely. Not finally. The war will grind on for another 2 years. More ships will sink. More men will die. But the decisive moment has passed. Germany will not starve Britain into submission. The convoys will get through. And the men who made this possible, the engineers at MIT, the radar operators on destroyers, the pilots of patrol aircraft, these men will never be celebrated as heroes. Their names will not appear in history books. But they won the war, just as surely as the soldiers who stormed the beaches at Normandy. Across the Atlantic, in France, Kapitänleutnant Ernst Bauer wakes from another nightmare. He lies in his cot, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sound of bombers passing overhead. Soon, he'll have to go back to sea. Not to the North Atlantic, that theater is closed now. Too dangerous even for volunteers. But to the waters off Norway, or the Mediterranean, or the Arctic convoys to Murmansk. He'll go because he's a naval officer and he follows orders. He'll go because his country is fighting for its survival. He'll go because 50 men depend on him, and he won't abandon them. But he knows, with absolute certainty, that he won't come back. None of them will. The mathematics have shifted too far. The U-boat force is finished. All that remains is to die with as much dignity as possible. In Cambridge, Massachusetts, Dr. Everett continues his work on radar improvements. The war is far from over. There are always new challenges, new problems to solve. The Japanese submarines in the Pacific, the possibility of new German technology, snorkels, hydrogen peroxide engines, acoustic homing torpedoes. The radar must keep evolving, must stay ahead of the enemy. Everett works late into the night, as always. Around him, the laboratory hums with activity. Engineers test circuits. Technicians calibrate antennas. The work never stops. On the radar screens, green blips trace their endless patterns. Each blip is a ship. Each ship is a target or a threat, depending on which side it belongs to. The radar doesn't judge. It just shows what's there, translating electromagnetic reflections into visual information that humans can understand. Somewhere in the Atlantic, at this very moment, a destroyer is using Everett's radar to hunt a submarine. Perhaps the submarine will escape. Perhaps it will be sunk. Everett will never know. The radar will do its job, and men will live or die based on what it shows them. This is modern war. Fought not with courage or honor or tactical brilliance, but with technology, with radar and sonar and radio intercepts and code-breaking machines. The side with better technology wins. The side with worse technology loses. It's that simple. And that terrible. In Lorient, the concrete U-boat pen stands silent under the stars. Inside, 40 boats wait for their next mission. Their crews sleep, or try to sleep, knowing that most of them won't survive the summer. The Battle of the Atlantic has been decided. The U-boats have lost. But the dying will continue for another 2 years, until the war finally grinds to its inevitable conclusion. And in some locked file in Naval Intelligence Headquarters, a report will be written. It will document the deployment of centimetric radar, the losses of U-boats in May 1943, the withdrawal of German submarines from the North Atlantic. The report will be classified secret, and it will remain classified for decades. But the conclusion will be clear. Technology won the Battle of the Atlantic. Not bravery or strategy or industrial production, though all of those mattered. But ultimately, it was the ability to see in the dark, to detect enemies through fog and night and storm, that turned the tide. The U-boat captains were shocked when American destroyers found them in total darkness. They couldn't understand it. How could the enemy see them when they couldn't be seen? They never learned the answer. Most of them died without knowing. But the answer was simple. The Americans could see in the dark because they had invented a way to do so. Because engineers in a laboratory in Massachusetts had solved the problem of generating high-power microwaves. Because physicists had understood the properties of electromagnetic radiation. Because 1,000 small innovations had accumulated into one decisive advantage. This is how wars are won in the 20th century. Not on battlefields, but in laboratories. Not by generals, but by engineers. Not with courage, but with mathematics. The U-boat captains were brave. They were skilled. They were determined. But they were also obsolete. And obsolescence, in war, is fatal.